going to try to paint the basic colors of this sort of pink wall back here. So I'm going to get most of the water out of my brush, and then maybe a little bit of a tartar on there. And you definitely want it to be wet so that it has some flow to it, but not as much as the underpainting. So I'm basically going to just start painting this on here. And you want to go ahead and get around the edges of your subject, because you're going to be painting over this. This is the lighter color right here. And it turns out that I'm not going to have near enough paint mixed to do this whole thing, so I'm going to have to stop and get my amounts of paint sorted out. But you basically want to cover everything that's going to be on this wall, and don't worry about covering up your edges, because you're going to paint over that immediately anyway, eventually I should say. So I mixed up some more of this background color here. It's not exactly the same, but I think it'll work for our purposes. And it's okay to overlap your borders of your subject a little bit, because you want to create your edges on top of that. So you want to generally work back to front, because that way, you know, the thing that's on top will be farther in front. I'm going to be doing just sort of the basic hues of this wall back here. So that, and right now I want to do it so I can kind of get that gradient between this and the lighter color over here. So let me just get all the paint off this brush. I'm going to get some more white. And while I'm doing that, I'll probably spray this with water. That's just water. And hopefully, I'm getting low on my white here, because you use that, as I said, for almost everything. So I'm going to mix some white into my background purple color over here, and have just a lighter shade of the same thing. As you can see in the photo of the original, that there's a lot of other colors, and we'll get to that later on. Right now I'm just putting on the base color, but you can see there's some yellow and there's some green scumbled in there, and we will, for now, just be doing the basic kind of light pink color. And actually, I'm going to make it even lighter than I was going to. I'll put another section here, because you always want to think about, okay, what am I going to be putting on top of this? Am I going to be putting something darker or something lighter? Usually it's going to be something lighter, but in this case I'm going to be putting more dark stuff on top of that. So this value over here is going to be quite light. And I don't know if you can see, but I have basically 3 different levels of this purple. And let's see if I can get most of the water out of this giant brush without making a mess. I'll get some of my medium value purple right here. And like I said, I'm not super concerned about edges right now, because I'm going to create those edges when I actually paint the object. So and you want to be sort of doing this while your paint is still wet. As you can see, the blending still isn't perfect. I have some light areas in here. This is the lightest version of the color that I have. One of the bad things about, or one of the challenges of working with a giant brush is that it's hard to get just one color on there. But for now, this will do, because there's so much detail that's going to be added on top of this. And then, actually it's really light down here next to the table. And I'm going to try to get this a little bit more locked down right here. And then I might try to clean off my brush. It might be better if you had a different brush. I've only got one big brush like this, so for right now I'm going to try to get this one as clean as I can. But what I want to do, like obviously this is not a super clean gradient over here, but while this is still wet and it's a little bit sticky, is I'm going to take my brush and just kind of feather out and you want to go in all directions. So horizontal, up and down, diagonally in both directions. And you'll feel resistance at this point because your paint, even with the retarder in there, your paint is already drying. But you're just taking the different values and kind of blending them in. As you can see, that there's still some of the underpainting shining through back here, and there's basically all different values of this same pink, and that'll be to our advantage when we do the final thing, because this is like kind of a scumbled, sort of oil painting background. So still at this point, don't worry about it being super clean. Don't worry about having the perfect values of every part of the background. Just try to get the general right colors. You're finding your colors, you're finding your value scheme in this. Then when I do this bottom part, it's going to be a little bit more, be the same color probably, but with more of a yellow to it. And then the surface of the table will be more white, but with more of the same. I'm just getting the bottom part of this background here, and what I'm going to do right now is just turn this over so that I can paint the very bottom of it. And I think that the edge of this table is a little lower than the line that I drew, so I'm not going quite all the way up to that. That looks good for right now. And this original color of pink is a little more prevalent over here, so while this is still a little bit wet, I'm going to blend that in over here on the right. Oops. So here we have the basic first step background. It's kind of blended together, but it's not totally perfect, and you don't want it to be because your reference isn't perfect. I've got the wall, the surface of the table, and the front of the table, and they're just the basic colors of everything, and that will be the first thing that you do after the underpainting. So that will be your next project. Make sure to stay safe, wash your hands, do all that stuff, and I'll see you next time.